First and foremost, shout out to Marge for picking up a coffee this morning. Much needed. Now, today's video's topic is how prices change on different apps, different platforms. So this kind of is a good one actually, because it definitely sits in line with everything that's been sort of the topics that's been going on so far, especially with looking at the previous video about how third parties versus your own website, and I guess a little bit of an excavation into different platforms. But I mean, think about how the prices change on all the different platforms. The first question I always address is who's the target audience for those platforms. And the reason why that's probably the most first important thing is that socio-economic backgrounds plus demographics plus age groups have massive impacts on those price changes, and also the approach around set brands. So there's almost an unlimited amount of examples I can give, so I'll try and simplify things as much as possible. But when we look at how prices change, to look at the first thing and look at the demographic of each platform. So if I was to really like bite-sized generalize some parts of the information, Vinted, the app Vinted, is within a similar group of Facebook Marketplace, and everybody that knows Facebook, it's targeted for older people, generally mums, generally people around the 40 to 60 age. So with that, Vinted has a similar group. When you look at something like eBay, the first app to ever distribute secondhand products, that is a much bigger range of people, which sits around people that start around 15 to 17. However, it goes all the way up to about 65, 75. When you look at Depop, albeit an app that is definitely getting more traction with an older audience, it is designed at Gen Zs and designed at students and millennials and people within, I would say, a 15 to 35 age range. So when we kind of like firstly address the age and how the price would differ for that. So age is a massive perspective or a massive shift in where the price would change. And the reason why I believe that so much is that young people are brought up on the brands based on the stylistic approach of them, whereas an older audience is brought up on the brand based on what they knew before. If you asked your parents about Adidas jackets versus asking a 15-year-old about Adidas jackets, the way that their entry point is to the brand is so much different, because somebody from an older audience is going to think that Adidas isn't as valuable because they've seen it at a certain point and they've not looked at it from a stylistic approach. Also, people from an older, maturer market have been sustainable via buying secondhand for a lot longer than younger people, but their entry point is actually just affordability more so than it is on trends. You do get people, don't get me wrong, you get like the older audiences that are definitely fashion trend based, but for a sort of rule of thumb, it's the younger people that dictate the style based on the trends because they react to celebrity influence. So how does that relate to different prices on different apps? So if we take, for example, just like an example, if we take, say, a Nike sweatshirt and we looked at it on Depop, we looked at it on Vinted, and we looked at it on eBay, right? All of those platforms have different demographics, different targets, different sort of people that use them, and so many other reasons behind it that to sort of like keep the video as short and sweet as possible, I won't be able to do total justice to. But if you took a Nike sweatshirt and you looked at it across all of those platforms, you took it to Vinted, you would probably find, and say it's the same one, for example, that same sweatshirt could range from anywhere between £8 to £28. And it's not to say that it's being undervalued at £8 or it's being overvalued at £28, but it's apps that are led by different demographics and completely different markets. So when we kind of like look at how the prices change on that, the demographic plays a massive part into it. The age of people, the response to it, and in my eyes, I think that's probably one of the most valid points, is those people's approach to the brands before. an older person or a mature person that uses Vinted or maybe uses eBay is going to look at your regular, say like this. Say this. In fact, Ralph Lauren's a bad example, and this is why it gets complex, because Ralph Lauren on eBay would sell for so much more, because you think about the person who buys, and it's driven by where the demand is on the brand anyway. So how do I articulate this simply? Parents, say everybody knows, like someone's dad whose mom always goes out and buys them Hugo Boss polos, goes and buys them Ralph Lauren, goes and buys that, and she'll go and spend 140 quid per time in a shop, whereas she'll end up going on eBay and going, oh, Anthony, Derek, whatever his name is, I found this Ralph Lauren beautiful soft pink polo and it's like 25 quid. Whereas you take that same item like this onto Vinted and put it up for £25, and someone's going to send you a message and go, sorry mate, I'll give you £8. And that's not to discredit Vinted, and that's not to overshoot eBay. It's just that the person that looks for this polo because they would buy it new but want to buy it second hand will most likely end up on eBay more so than they will Vinted. Because I think there's also, with the prices that change, people, it's very hard to simplify this, but like a person that would buy this new for £130 would probably not buy it for £8 from Vinted, purely because that is such an over devaluation in the price that they would then question its authenticity, its condition and wearability, and just the whole process of trusting this platform, because it's so much cheaper than what it would cost new. Whereas eBay creates that cheaper alternative that still feels like you're paying a price for a product and a brand that is reputable. Now, I know I've just used Depop, eBay and Vinted for the examples and how it changes, and realistically, price is subjective. The underlying thing that I've always learned from it is an item is worth as much as somebody is willing to pay for it. It does not mean that you have to overprice an item to challenge it, and you don't need to use things against people if you can sell it for cheaper. Obviously, it comes down to many other factors about what your brand is, how you're trying to market yourself, but that's so many other concepts for different videos. In terms of this one and how prices change on different apps, I would say that the demographic and the age and the location of a person is a massive driving force in how that price will change. The person who is buying its perspective on that brand in that current moment is a massive driving force in how that price will change. A young Gen Z person that likes Adidas because they did a collab with Gucci has a different perspective and will therein result have a different reaction to how much they're willing to pay on Depop compared to somebody who likes Adidas just because they used to wear it for nostalgia when they were young and now they're looking for it on eBay. It's very hard to like condense this, but I would say that they're the sort of main points that change the price based on the different apps. So Vinted, I would say, is much more of an affordable one for people who, I've called it the cost of living customers, and I mean that with like respect. It's an app that's made for people that like are on a bit more of a budget with purchasing. Depop is for people who have more of a perception towards being on trend. The app itself is definitely catered towards making you feel like you're a part of, you know, the normcore, the blokecore, the Y2K, the you know, whatever that trend is, Depop has it represented on there. And then eBay is for, in my eyes, people who want to maintain reputation for the brands by paying a good price for them secondhand. 1 minute. Got to help Marge out with these. That would be my underlying. All these washed, ready to go for a stream later on, if you see this, but by the time you see it, it might already be gone. But anyway, yeah, they were my points based on how the prices change on different apps and platforms. Feel free to give any feedback on what you think of that, or if you think I missed something out, which I most definitely did. I'm realizing that in 10 to 12 minute videos, there's so much information to try and condense, but hopefully I've given you sort of a taster into that topic. And if you want to know more, feel free to drop a comment. So yeah.